crazy. And he knew what the translation of that was. He knew that people were talking about not being able to get in to name brand universities, Ivy Leagues or near Ivies, and their fear that if they didn't get into those 110 schools that deny more people than they admit in this country, that maybe they wouldn't have a chance to be successful. And he started his writing both as a New York Times editor and then in his books to try to say, actually, there are lots of places that you've never heard of with amazing outcomes that you can also put on your search list along with the schools that you have a great comfort zone with. And then be able to relax a little bit, because it's likely that schools that you haven't heard of that still have those great outcomes may also not have those denial rates that worry you. They are accepting 60% of the people that apply, and that should give you some comfort. The other thing that he tried to focus on was to say to everyone what you should be looking for as you evaluate colleges. Is what he was doing when he was writing about looking beyond the Ivy League, and when he then narrowed down to find these 40 colleges for colleges that change lives. What he's found by talking to both college professors as well as employers and graduate school faculty members when he was trying to find out what it is that makes a good undergraduate education, here's what he came up with. And I'll tell you why then, it turns out, by a different set of evaluations, he was right. He said you should be sure to look for places that give you the ability to think critically and creatively, to use both sides of your brain, and certainly not to be looking for an education where all you will do is regurgitate information and sit in a lecture hall like this and fill out Scantron information over and over again. That won't be the kind of education that will lead to a lifelong education, lifelong learning, and a richness. It's fascinating now that so often employers are writing about the necessity of both sides of the brain, and that great employers are ones that can think both creatively and critically, and this extends to engineering, which sounds counterintuitive. Well, maybe they only need that left side. No, they need that right side too in order to be good problem solvers, in addition to having that left brain use. The other piece is the ability to learn how to write well. Not just in one English composition class, but for all 4 years across the curriculum. And you have to ask the questions to find out if that's going to happen. Is someone going to be asking you to write short answers for exams? Is someone going to ask you to write paper? Are many people going to ask you to write papers that they will then grade and evaluate and give you feedback on? This is how you become a better writer, no matter what the discipline. Asking the questions to find out that that will happen is critical to the process. Being able to learn what will happen when you are ready to graduate and who's going to help you unlock it and figure out what's next. Who are the people at the institutions that do the advising, that help you make sure that you've had experiential learning in addition to the academic learning that's happening in the classroom. It serves two roles. It helps you figure out if the things that you thought you were really good at and really loved is really the case. And internships can often do this, and fellowships can do this, in addition to some paid jobs that you might be able to get through your connection with faculty members and advisors and the alumni that are at these institutions, if the network works the way it's supposed to. Ask the questions to find out if that's the case. The ability to appreciate life beyond that college campus, that it's a very small universe, so do you have opportunities to grow by taking advantage of interacting with the community beyond the college or university and the broader community globally, since indeed we do exist in a global environment? Are there study abroad opportunities? Are there ones for studying abroad for a short period of time if you don't want to go for a semester or a year? Is there support to help you be able to do this? Again, it will get you beyond that narrow universe that a college and university can be, and it is what employers and graduate schools are asking. So Loren Pope outlined these, and then a few years ago, in 2007, the American Association of Colleges and Universities did a study to try to determine, what made a good undergraduate liberal arts education. And I don't do PowerPoint anymore because so often I arrive at a school and it doesn't work in an evening, and it's kind of hard when you think you're going to use your PowerPoint and you lug a laptop around it. So instead, and the other thing is that people think that I'm making these things up, and so I carry my yellowed copy of the newspaper article that this was in and hold it up to you as evidence that this happened. So the American Association of Colleges and Universities had a panel where they involved not only college professors, but they involved employers, Fortune 500 companies and others and CEOs to ask them about the students that were coming to them from undergraduate institutions and what skill sets they had and what was lacking. And if they could come up with something that would be an ability for you as parents to use as a benchmark as you are doing evaluations, and for colleges to then try to better themselves and offer the kind of curriculum. Well, Loren Pope was right on the money, even though he did it 30 years before this came out. And the report identified 4 essential learning outcomes that graduates in the liberal arts should possess: a broad base of knowledge across multiple disciplines, intellectual and practical skills such as teamwork and problem solving. So it's the critical and creative skills and the collaborative skills that are important. A sense of personal and social responsibility and experience applying what they learned to real-world problems. So this is what Loren Pope had gone out searching for when he looked at the colleges. And what he did is things that you can do. If you don't want to do the research, then you can go ahead and read what he wrote about. And what he did was things like looking at MCAT scores, the test to get into medical school. And he looked at the scores, and then he looked at where students went as undergraduates that got the best scores in the country. And he found out that even though he was seeing the Ivies and the big universities, he was seeing colleges like the 40 in the book and other liberal arts colleges, some that he had never heard the name of, appearing in the top of these lists. And the same thing was true for GMAT exams and GREs. And the same thing was true when he interviewed executives and asked them why they hired people from schools that were lesser known. And it was because of what they were able to tell him they did at these undergraduate universities, this chance to be involved from the get-go and not be told, no, the graduate students are the ones that have this opportunity and it's not for the undergraduates. This is a hard thing to do. National Public Radio wanted to try not to be the bad guys and do the scary stories that bring you fear and anxiety. They wanted to say, but what about these great students who can get into the best schools in the country? Why would they choose to go to a lesser known school? Are there any of those students that really exist? They asked me, and I said, absolutely. Let me get you the names of some of them. They said, we'd like to do a program about that. And this is out of Minnesota Public Radio. So they did. They got we provided them with names, and they went out and did their own interviews. And they interviewed these students who talked about what they were seeking and what they did as they went through the college admissions process and how they were able to get into both very well-known schools, the most selective schools, and what also they were able to do and investigated when the lesser-known schools and how they chose. And it was great. It was their own words. And they talked about how hard it was when they said to someone, I found my school and I'm so happy. And they gave the name of the college, Ursinus College. And somebody would say, what? Ursinus? What kind of name is that? I've never heard of that. This happens to be a liberal arts college outside of Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. Or they would give the name of Cornell College, and people would say, oh, Cornell, of course you're going to Cornell. Oh, no, not that Cornell in New York, Cornell in Iowa, the one course at a time place. And they would begin to give their reasons why, that they had found these places, and they were passionate. And in the students' words, they were very excited about it. That series got so many web hits. They called me and they said, we never knew college admissions was so fascinating. You can't believe how many people are hitting the site that we put up after the series was on. And we wrote a piece for them called How to Choose a College That's Right for You. And it's in this brochure that's up here that you can grab later. And people continue to use it as a resource because for students it gave them an idea that other people might be trying to do what they're doing, and they wanted to know, what do I do when somebody says, really? You're really going to go to that place that we've not heard of? On the parent side, it's tough too. I think, and speaking as a parent who's been through this, and by the way, anybody out there worried about doing this and the cost associated with sending your children to college? Anybody having any fear or stress or anxiety about that? I can feel your pain. I do want to tell you that it's possible to go through this, to have them do it successfully in 4 years, to graduate, to go on and to get jobs, move out of your house and be independent, and every now and again they buy dinner for you. It's great, and it can happen to you too. I'm an example of that, so that can happen. But I have to tell you that often parents will tell me that the reason they get so involved with this and they're anxious about it is because they fear too that if